Hi, I'm Ashley. Before I dive into my story, I hope you'll stick around for more of these glimpses into my life. I'm 35, a finance professional, and I'm fortunate enough to live in the house where I grew up. This cozy place, rich with childhood memories, became mine when my parents retired and moved to Aspen. It's always been my sanctuary until one unexpected Saturday. The doorbell rang sharply, interrupting my peaceful weekend. Through the frosted glass, I saw Linda, my mother-in-law, standing on the porch. And not alone. My heart sank. Linda's visits were always unannounced, and they always brought chaos. I braced myself and opened the door. Ashley, we need to talk, Linda declared, sweeping past me without so much as a hello. Behind her, Bob's brother Mike, his wife Karen, their kids, and a couple of movers started hauling boxes from a van. I stared at them, confused. What's happening? I asked, my voice tinged with panic. We're moving in, Linda replied, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Bob thinks it's a good idea. It's what family does in tough times. Before I could even process her words, Bob appeared, nodding casually. It's all good, babe. We've got the space, he said, waving off my shock like it was nothing. I looked around, feeling the walls of my home closing in. But this is our home, Bob. Our space. His reply came fast, sharp, and cold. Ashley, don't make a fuss. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave. His words hit me like a slap. I was speechless, standing there as strangers, family, but strangers nonetheless, began taking over my home. Karen was directing the movers to the sunniest room for her new studio, as if she had lived here all her life. The house, once my refuge, was transforming into something unrecognizable room by room. Feeling trapped, I managed to whisper, I need to think about this, but my words were met with dismissive looks. No one cared how I felt. The invasion of my home escalated as Linda, Mike, and Karen scattered their belongings everywhere, while Bob stood by, indifferent. Finally, I couldn't take it any longer. This is too much, I shouted, standing amidst the chaos. You can't just take over like this. Bob's face hardened. We're family, Ashley. You're supposed to support us. He echoed Linda's earlier words as if they were gospel truth. And this is still my home, I countered, my voice trembling. But it didn't matter. They all looked at me as if I were the intruder. Linda scoffed. You're being selfish, Ashley. We stick together as a family. Frustration boiled over. I need respect in my own home, I snapped. You can't just barge in and take over. The room fell silent, the tension heavy and suffocating. Bob's face twisted with anger. Suddenly, his hand came down, striking my cheek. The sound echoed in the room, more shocking than the pain itself. If you don't like it, you can leave, he spat, his voice cold and final. Tears blurred my vision, but it wasn't the slap that stung the most, it was the betrayal. The realization hit me hard. I was utterly alone in this, with no one on my side. I turned and fled to our bedroom, their distant voices chasing me down the hall. Grabbing a bag, I packed the essentials, every item a reminder of the life I was about to leave behind. With a deep, shaky breath, I stepped out of the house. The cool air felt like a lifeline as I closed the door behind me. That sound, the door clicking shut, was more than the end of a chapter. It was the start of something new. I wasn't just walking away from a toxic situation. I was stepping toward reclaiming my independence. Though the betrayal cut deep, it also ignited a resolve within me. I moved into a modest rental apartment, a quiet place where I could gather my thoughts. This small space became my new sanctuary, a refuge from the storm of my old life. Bob and Linda bombarded my phone with calls and texts, some pleading, others accusatory, but I ignored them. With the support of my parents, who were outraged by what had happened, I focused on rebuilding my life. You need to protect yourself and your property. Ashley, you need to take action. My dad insisted during one of our calls, his voice steady and full of resolve. With my parents' unwavering encouragement, I knew I couldn't back down. They pushed me to seek legal advice, which led me to Miss Carter, a seasoned property lawyer. Sitting in her office, surrounded by shelves full of legal tomes, I began to feel my purpose crystallize. Miss Carter, I began, my voice trembling slightly. I inherited that house, and they've taken it over without my consent. She nodded slowly, her eyes focused as she listened. We'll start with a notice of eviction, she explained, her tone firm but reassuring. And if they retaliate, we can pursue a restraining order. Her strategy was clear, offering me a way through the legal maze that had entangled my life. Feeling empowered by her guidance, I made my first decisive move. I cut off the utilities to the house. Each phone call to the utility companies was a small victory, each confirmation of disconnection, a step toward reclaiming my independence from Bob and his family's manipulative hold. This wasn't just about flipping switches, it was a declaration. The repercussions were immediate. My phone buzzed relentlessly, flooded with calls and voicemails. Bob's voice, thick with frustration and indignation, filled my inbox. "Ashley, this is extreme. How could you?" His words, once potent enough to fill me with guilt, now held no power. I erased each message, hardening myself against his manipulative pleas. Sitting in my sparsely furnished apartment, a small but peaceful sanctuary, I realized this was a pivotal moment. The old Ashley, timid, endlessly accommodating, was fading. In her place, a stronger version of me was emerging, someone who wasn't afraid to fight for what was rightfully hers. The legal battle escalated. With Miss Carter by my side, I formally served Bob and his family a notice of trespassing. The document was a clear declaration that they had no right to occupy my home. It felt like a weight lifted as the legal process unfolded. The moment Bob received the notice, the tone of the conflict shifted. His once dismissive attitude turned desperate. "Ashley, we can work this out. Let's talk, please," one of his messages read, tinged with a newfound vulnerability. But the sting of his betrayal was still too raw for me to consider any form of reconciliation. "Don't be swayed by his emotional appeals," Miss Carter cautioned me during one of our meetings. "This is about your rights and reclaiming your home." Meanwhile, Bob's life began unraveling. Word spread quickly, and soon his reckless behavior and our public dispute caught up with him at work. A mutual friend informed me that he had been suspended from his job at the garage, pending further investigation into his conduct. Linda and Bob scrambled to gain sympathy from the rest of the family, but opinions were divided. Some relatives sympathized, while others chose to stay out of the drama altogether. Then, in a last-ditch effort, Bob appeared at my apartment. His face was worn, the toll of the battle evident in his tired eyes. Standing in the hallway, he pleaded with me through the door. "Ashley, we can fix this. Please just come home and we'll sort everything out," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. But I had already crossed a line I couldn't and wouldn't go back on. My reply was steady, resolute, and delivered through the closed door. "There's nothing left to discuss, Bob. You need to vacate my property and move on. This is non-negotiable." Rejecting his final plea was a defining moment for me. I had firmly shut the door on the past, on a life that no longer served me. My path was clear, guided by self-respect and the law, and there was no turning back. As the moving van finally pulled away from my house, a wave of relief washed over me. For the first time in months, the house was mine again, free from the noise, tension, and unwanted presence that had suffocated it. I stood at the doorway, letting the quiet seep in. It wasn't just an empty house. It was a blank canvas, ready for a fresh start. I walked through the rooms, each step echoing in the newfound silence. The walls, marked by the remnants of my unwanted guests, needed a fresh coat of paint, a fitting symbol for the renewal I was about to begin. I meticulously planned each renovation, choosing colors and decor that reflected my style, something I had long suppressed in the name of family harmony that was never reciprocated. In the midst of this planning, my phone buzzed. It was Bob. His name on a screen no longer stirred feelings of betrayal or pain. Bob's name flashed on my phone screen once again, accompanied by an apology. "I'm sorry, Ashley. I never wanted things to go this far. Can we meet and talk this through?" I stared at the message, feeling a strange calm wash over me. It wasn't the first time Bob had tried to apologize, but this one felt different, more desperate, more final. I typed my response, each word steady and clear, reflecting the months of turmoil and growth I'd endured. "There's nothing left to discuss, Bob. I wish you well, but it's best we go our separate ways." My phone rang almost instantly. His voice, once so familiar and comforting, now seemed distant and strained. "Please, Ashley, just one conversation. For old time's sake." I leaned against the newly painted wall, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath my palm. This house was my home now, mine alone. "No, Bob. There's nothing you can say to change what happened. It's time for both of us to move on." There was a long pause, heavy with unsaid words, before he finally conceded. All right, Ashley, I hope you find happiness. I ended the call, a quiet weight lifting from my shoulders. As I wandered through the house, I could feel a shift, a lightness. Each room was a canvas awaiting my touch. The kitchen would get new cabinets, the living room a vibrant splash of color. Every choice I made, every renovation I planned, was a reclaiming of my space and my life. As I reviewed fabric swatches for the new sofa, the doorbell rang. Hesitant, I approached, half expecting to see Bob or Linda again. Instead, it was my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, holding a tray of cookies. Heard the moving truck, thought you might like these. You look like you could use a good sugar rush, she said with a warm smile. Her kindness was a balm I hadn't realized I needed. We sat sipping tea in my cluttered kitchen, and I shared the broad strokes of my story. Mrs. Thompson listened intently, her expressions shifting from shock to support. You've done well, Ashley. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but look at you, turning this house back into a home. Her words were heartening, strengthening my resolve to keep pushing forward. That evening, I lost myself in paint chips and design magazines, dreaming of what was to come. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the house transformed. New fixtures replaced the old, fresh paint brightened every corner, and the shadows of painful memories were chased away by the vibrant hues of a new beginning. One afternoon, as I arranged books on a new shelf, my phone buzzed. Another message from Bob. This time, it wasn't an apology laced with desperation. It was more subdued. He wrote that he understood my need for space and hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive him someday. I read the message, my heart steady. Then, with a calm resolve, I deleted it without responding. Forgiveness might come in time, but forgetting was not an option, and I no longer felt bound by the pressure to offer either. This house, once a symbol of obligation and compromise, had become a fortress of solitude and strength. To celebrate, I hosted a small housewarming party, inviting friends who had stood by me through the turmoil. Their praises for the renovations, the warmth of their company, and the sound of laughter filling the rooms were my true victory. As the last guest left, I turned off the lights and stood in the quiet darkness, looking out at the peaceful street. The battle to reclaim my home and my life had been hard fought. But now, I stood victorious. Not because I had defeated anyone, but because I had rediscovered myself. This house was no longer just a place to live. It was a testament to my resilience, my determination, and my ability to forge ahead, no matter the odds. In the stillness of the night, I realized this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning, a chance to build a life filled with choices made for me by me. This was my victory, my liberation, and the first page of a new chapter in my life. Now here's a question for you. Should Ashley have given Bob another chance to explain himself? Or was she right to cut ties completely and move forward with her life? What would you have done in her situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to like and subscribe for more engaging content. Your support helps us bring more stories to life.